The path to the Big 12 title game for Arizona State is laid out before them. Sorta.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks to all of you for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your show. Stay in touch by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back in to this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast. And my goodness, is it an interesting one? Tell me, honestly, with pure honesty, did you, in the month of June, July, over the summer, did you think that in mid-November, with 3 games left to go, that ASU would be in firm contention for a Big 12 title game appearance? Unless you are the craziest fan in the world, dare I say delusional, and nonetheless, I respect it and I love it. You probably didn't think so. I didn't think so. I said ASU was going 7-5 this year. They already have 7 wins and there's 3 left. 10-2 is not out of the realm of possibilities, but my goodness, that's what it's going to take to get to the Big 12 title game. It starts with going 10-2. And we're going to talk today about how ASU can get to the title game. Now, they, like I said at the top of the show, they have the path laid out before them. It's not all entirely in their control. There are certain aspects that ASU does completely control, but it's really only one thing, and that's winning out. And this is about the worst schedule that ASU could be facing to win out the rest of the year. Starting this weekend, ASU is on the road visiting number 16 Kansas State. If you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I am out on this game. I have been out since the schedule was released. I have been out since the summer. I am still out. It is Wednesday, November 13th. I don't think they win. And it's really unfortunate, and it stinks, and it sucks, and it almost definitely takes you out of the Big 12 title race. It's a tough game. And even if you win, next Saturday, you are hosting number 6 BYU. That's equally as tough, maybe even tougher. BYU's undefeated right now. And you close out the year visiting Arizona. It's the Territorial Cup. The Wildcats are terrible, but I've said before, it goes both ways. ASU could be 11-0 and take on an 0-11 Wildcats team, and the Wildcats could win. Vice versa. U of A could be the number 1 team in the nation. ASU could be winless. They could still win that game. You have 3 games left on your schedule, and none of them are guaranteed. You can say U of A is guaranteed. I will, because I will say that no matter what. I am in that direction of U of A is 11-0, ASU's 0-11, we're winning that game. But that's part of the delusion that I have as a fan, if we can totally be transparent here. There are no guaranteed wins remaining on the schedule. And that's unfortunate, because ASU is in the thick of it with not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 teams right now that share the same record, and a 5th team that they need to lose. This is the field for you. The number 1 seed in the Big 12, and incredibly unlikely that they get knocked off, is BYU. BYU is a perfect 6-0. Now, their win over Utah, plenty of controversy. I stay away from that. For one, neither of them are my team. For 2, it doesn't really affect me. It's not like a BYU loss was going to guarantee ASU a spot. BYU would need to lose at least 2 games for ASU to flat out overtake them. And I don't think that's happening. So in the meantime, they need to worry about the following teams. Sitting in second place is Colorado at 5-1 in conference play. Yes, they have a 7-2 record, just like the other 4 teams I'm about to talk about, including ASU. That does not matter because Colorado only has 1 loss in conference play. If Colorado wins out the year, and it's very possible, they've got a very winnable schedule. They host Utah this weekend. They visit Kansas next Saturday. And then the following Friday, they are hosting Oklahoma State. What's funny about those games is those should be games they should definitively win. All 3 of them feel like trap games. All 3 of them feel like trap games. Utah, that's a team that has so underperformed this year, and it feels like they are dying to ruin someone's season. Kansas has come alive as of late, and I don't know who pissed them off, but they have knocked off 2 of the top contenders in the last few weeks. They knocked off, or I guess they have 2 wins. I don't know why I thought they knocked off 2 contenders. Well, they knocked off Iowa State, which was huge. They only lost to Kansas State by 2 points. That was the other game I thought, but I thought they won. This is not a Kansas team that you're going to walk over. And Oklahoma State, they have no wins in the conference. There's no way they finish the year winless in conference play, right? I mean, if it's the last game of the year for OK State and they're still winless in conference play, you have to think they're going to go all in. It's not this super daunting schedule. Colorado has the easiest path, I would say, to the Big 12 championship game. You also have Iowa to worry about. And with Iowa, they've got a okay schedule to end the year. They're hosting Cincinnati. Cincy's tough. They're visiting Utah. We'll see. And then they are hosting Kansas State, and that game could decide who goes to the Big 12 championship game. Very, very, very much could decide that. You've also got to worry about West Virginia. West Virginia is also 4-2 in the conference, but they are 5-4 overall. I think that affects them. It might not affect them, but if it does not affect them, and it is truly only conference play, they have to host Baylor, host UCF, and visit Texas Tech. Those are all toss-up games, and West Virginia has been very unpredictable this year. They've had some really good wins, and they've had some not good losses. And these are 3 teams they're playing that are very volatile. They could easily win out, or they could easily lose out, and I wouldn't be surprised either way. Then you have ASU. ASU 7-2 and a brutal schedule. You are in competition with these 5 teams. Colorado is second place at 5-1. You need them to lose a game no matter what. The rest of these teams, you have common opponents, and common opponents is going to be one of the biggest tiebreakers for the Sun Devils in this upcoming game. Their most important wins right now are Kansas, Utah, and UCF. Those 3 wins are going to be definitive when deciding who is going to make it to the playoff, or not the playoff, to the conference championship game over the other team. These are tiebreaker games, and your wins and losses against them are huge, man. Then you've got 2 notable losses, which is Cincinnati and Texas Tech. And these are also 2 games that are going to be very detrimental to whether or not you have the better conference record. And the reason why is because your third tiebreaker, I believe, your third tiebreaker is based off of, or no, not the third tiebreaker. The second tiebreaker is based off of common wins and losses to opponents in the same conference. So we'll talk about tiebreakers a little more down the road here, but those games are the most important. Kansas, Utah, UCF, Cincinnati, Texas Tech. You're 3-2 in those games. With the remaining games that you have, K-State, BYU, Arizona, none of those are going to affect head-to-head with every single team. They affect certain teams, but it's still basically a win-out scenario for ASU. When it comes to all common opponents for these 4 teams, and Colorado as well, these are the common opponents. This is the way that the field is spread out right now for ASU. They're in a 4-way tie for third place. I'm not sure if West Virginia will be affected by their overall record. I don't think they will. I think it is purely based off of conference record, because that's the reason why ASU did not finish last in the Pac-12 last year, but Colorado did, is ASU had 2 conference wins and Colorado had 1. So I'm pretty sure it's only based off conference record. So there's 4 teams with a 4-2 record, and then there's Colorado. You need them to lose 1 game. At a minimum, 1 game Colorado has to lose. But you know what? We're going to talk about that more in just a moment. Let's go ahead and take a look at how ASU punches their ticket to the Big 12 title game. Coming up next, this is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let me talk to you about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks, and it makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier than before. Game Time Picks is going to filter out the fluff to only show you incredible deals on great seats, and you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets this way. The curation process makes it easier to save not just on sports, but you can save on concerts, on comedy, theater events, and more. Their all-in pricing feature, you're going to toggle that. It's going to show you the total upfront. There are no surprise fees at checkout. You know exactly what you're paying for. You can get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy. This way you know what to expect when you arrive. The best part about Game Time, by far, is their lowest price guarantee, because Game Time is going to credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets in the same section and row for less anywhere else. And of course, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Wherever you're getting your shows, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and you will get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in to make us your first listen of the day. A shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. ASU doesn't entirely control their own fate, but they do have a massive amount of control. And that's where we start. 3 steps for ASU to make it to the Big 12 title game. Step number 1, and the most important step, you got to win out. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you lose one more game, you are 3 losses in the Big 12. And guess what? There's a lot of teams with 3 losses in the Big 12. Right now, TCU, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, Baylor, and Houston all have 3 losses. A couple of those teams, Texas Tech and Cincinnati, hold a tiebreaker over you. So if they were to somehow finish 5-3 in the conference with ASU finishing 5-3, or if they were to finish 6-3 and ASU finished 6-3, there's the tiebreakers. You're done. Things become 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times more complicated if ASU does not win out. Your chances are basically 0 at that point. You would need so much madness to occur at that point. It's absurd how much would have to go right for ASU if you lose a game. Now, if you don't lose a game, you really only have a couple other things to worry about, which we'll talk about in just a second. But to win out, ASU, man, talk about like prove it time, like nut up or shut up, as the great Tallahassee would say from Zombieland. This is it. This is your nut up or shut up time. ASU 7-2 on the year. They are a perfect 5-0 at home, and they are 2-2 on the road. And they have 2 losses on the road against teams that they probably should have beaten, especially knowing the ramifications now. But it happened, and you have to own what happened. You lost in Lubbock to Texas Tech, and you lost in Cincinnati to the Bearcats. You have made your bed. You have to lay in it. Now you have to visit Kansas State, and you have to visit Arizona, and those are games you have to win. My logic here And this is a theory more than anything, because there's no proof to this. But what we saw this past weekend against UCF, and we talked about it the last couple of days. So if you have not checked out those episodes, go ahead and check them out after you finish this episode. What we saw against UCF was a team that when they faced that adversity and when they faced situations that could be demoralizing to them and knock them out of the game, they were able to rally back. They had answers on defense, on special teams, and obviously on offense. They didn't have that against Texas Tech. When they had those moments that were soul-crushing, just big plays or just unable to get off the field, felt like ASU was just not ready to get themselves back in the game. Happened against Cincinnati, too. Cam Scadaboo fumbled on the second drive of the game. They were not the same after that. These are two games that ASU could have won, but they didn't. And the reason why they didn't is they weren't all the way there. Once those big events happened, they were done. And that could have and probably should have happened against UCF, but they kept battling it out. So maybe after the second bye week, after that second loss to Cincinnati, they figured out a way to continue playing hard even when the circumstances start adding up against you. That's their biggest obstacle right now. The problem is those two losses are on the road. You have 2 more games on the road this year. And if you get in that spot, can you get yourself out of it? If Kansas State comes out and punches you in the mouth, they go right down the field and score a touchdown, and then they get an interception on the second drive. Is that going to be it? That's the game right there. ASU's demoralized at that point. They can't rebound from that. Well, there goes all our expectations and our hopes of going to the college football playoff and going to the Big 12 championship game. We're down early at K-State. We can't rebound. Is that what's going to happen? Because if it does, then yeah, you're done. Of course. K-State is by far the game I am the most worried about to end the rest of the year. Not BYU, not the Territorial Cup. It's this weekend against K-State. I highlighted during the summer, this is the most unwinnable game for ASU on the schedule. There was very little chance I backed down, and guess what? I'm not backing down. It is winnable. I don't like my odds, and I would love to be proven wrong. I do not like ASU's chances in this game, though, just to be completely transparent with you. But that's going to be the case here, is you need to be able to build off of what you did against UCF and how to survive those circumstances and the individual plays, the drives, whatever, that knock you down to the dirt, and you got to be able to get back up. That's step one, winning out the games, and that is going to be your cure to getting there. The catalyst to be able to win the games is knowing these are going to be slugfests, all 3 of them. All 3 of these games are going to be slugfests, but it's going to be a matter of whether or not you stay down or you get up like Randy Marsh and you say, I didn't hear no bell. Step number 2, and this is where ASU has 0 control over this. This is where Lady Luck needs to come into play, and that is Colorado has to lose at least 1 more game to end the year. There are no ifs, ands, or buts. If Colorado wins out, they simply have a better conference record than you. Better luck next time. They would be 8-1 in conference play. They are the only team besides BYU that only has 1 loss in conference play. Of course, BYU is undefeated. BYU, it's going to take a lot to knock them out of the Big 12 championship game. They'd probably have to lose out. They'd have to lose their last 3 games. That's not happening. Colorado needs to lose at least 1 game. And if you look at their schedule, they should be able to salsa dance their way through it. But if you look at their schedule, you could see 3 trap games. You could see 3 games that Colorado is going in and they're real confident. And they're like, oh, Utah, they've been terrible this year. They've got like 12 different quarterbacks. And then Utah comes to Boulder and they're like, we're still Utah and we're still your big brothers. And they beat you down. Or you go to Kansas and you're like, Lawrence, Kansas? Do people live here? You know, it's basketball season, right? And then all of a sudden, the Kansas team that gave K-State a run for its money and knocked off Iowa State, all of a sudden KU comes out and they go, yeah, welcome to the Big 12. And then they knock you out. And then Oklahoma State, last game of the year. Maybe you're looking ahead. You're like, oh man, we're one game away from going to the Big 12 championship game. And Oklahoma State's like, well, we haven't won a Big 12 game yet, so we're going to punch you in the mouth. There are 3 trap games here, but it's 3 games that Colorado should be able to win, which is where luck comes into play. Thankfully, you've got the good old-fashioned any given Saturday, and anything can happen. The worst teams can beat the best teams. The best teams can blow out the other best teams. The worst teams can have classics with the other worst teams. You have all sorts of possibilities, endless possibilities with college football. But the possibility you need in the next 3 weeks is just one Colorado loss. That's it, just one. One loss. And that will more than likely decide what happens after this, because step number 3 is winning the tiebreakers. Now, I did a very basic look at this. I have not dived into the details yet because, my goodness, there are a lot of deciding factors here, and there should be. But ASU, step 3, they have got to clinch those tiebreaker scenarios. If you win out and Colorado loses, as far as I can tell, you should be in. But there are some games that are more important than others. An example, Colorado still has to play, or let's not do Colorado. Let's do UCF. No. We'll just run like this. Against Texas, no, who hasn't played yet? Let's do Utah. Against Utah, ASU has a win. If Colorado had a loss to Utah, ASU would have the advantage there because they have a win over Utah, but Colorado does not have a win over Utah. But then that balances out with ASU lost to Texas Tech, but Colorado beat Texas Tech. So you're on this crazy scenario now, of the potential tiebreakers. From what I can tell from looking at it very, very briefly, I think ASU wins out and they're in. And it seems like that's the case. If you're really good at that stuff, please leave a comment and let me know if I'm really off or if I'm kind of right there with it. I think ASU, if they win out, they're good to go. And if Colorado loses the game, but you may need Iowa State and West Virginia to have 3 losses, and then you just have the 2 losses. So, but no matter what, Colorado has to lose one game and ASU needs to win out. You get a way to go 10-2 in the regular season with what's that end up being? A 7-2 conference record. You have as good a chance as anybody else. You need Colorado to lose no matter what. If you do have them lose and you win out, I am 90% positive you have the tiebreakers to advance. Otherwise, you need some madness to happen. That's how ASU gets there, though. They have to win out. Colorado's got to lose a game, and then you got to have whatever tiebreakers you need to get that far. Now, the last question we have here is, how realistic is it for ASU to get to that point? Well, that's what we're talking about coming up next. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to talk about FanDuel. You did not think that we were going to get through an episode of Locked On Sun Devils without talking about our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and you're going to get $150 in bonus bets if you win that bet. And that bet, it can be anything. That can be a money line. That can be a player prop. That can be a over-under spread, whatever it is. If you're betting on ASU, if you're betting on the NFL, $5, you win it, $150 in bonus bets. The FanDuel Sportsbook app also gives you everything you need to place live bets on things like the NFL all in one place. If you get that hunch in the middle of the game, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets so you feel confident about whatever you decide to do. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. One last time, wherever you're getting your shows, like, subscribe, turn on notifications. You will get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in to make us your first listen of the day and a special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Let's wrap up this episode now with a very interesting conversation. Can ASU make it? Well, we've got the scenarios laid out for how they can make it. Is it realistic for ASU to get there? That's up to you to decide. Me personally, there's a lot that has to go your way. And I understand we only had 3 steps. There are 3 huge steps. You're counting on Colorado to lose 1 game of Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State, all teams which are under 500 in the Big 12. The best team of those technically is Kansas with a 2-4 conference record. Utah has 1 win. Oklahoma State has no wins. Fun fact, if Oklahoma State beat Utah, then it's the opposite. Utah does not have any Big 12 wins, and Oklahoma State has 1 win. These are not good teams, and Colorado is hosting 2 of them. And the one that you're visiting is Kansas, and with no offense to Kansas, their home field advantage is not the same as what there is in Stillwater and what there is in Salt Lake City. So Colorado had a great draw here for their end to the season. They're also just a really good football team. They have taken down the teams that they are supposed to take down this year. Their losses to Nebraska, that was week 2 of the season, and we thought Nebraska had finally arrived. Their loss to Kansas State in mid-October, it's Kansas State. If Kansas State wins out and Colorado loses a game, then they're going to the Big 12 title game. It's a very workable schedule for Colorado. And if you're ever in a situation where you are counting on another team to lose so that you can advance, you are in a very bad spot. Your chances are not great. So sure, ASU can go 3-0. They can finish the year 10-2. If Colorado finishes the year 11-1, it doesn't even matter. And I got other news for you. You can finish 10-2, you're not going to the college football playoff. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the biggest reasons is that comparing a Big 12 team that's 10-2 to a Big 10 team that's 10-2, or God forbid, an SEC team that's 10-2, those teams are going to win every time. Who would the media rather have in the playoff? ASU or Ole Miss? What about ASU or Penn State? What about ASU or Alabama? These are pretty easy decisions if you are in the college football playoff committee. ASU does not have that weight. Maybe one day down the road, it would take a long time, ladies and gentlemen, for ASU to ever have the weight to say, yeah, we'd rather have them in than Alabama. And I truly don't think that'll ever be the case. Unless ASU ends up being like my ASU team in the college football 25 video game. I've won like 6 national championships. I'm trying for a 3-peat currently. Wish me luck on that one. Unless they turn into that, yeah, you don't have the name value to get yourself in over those other teams. You're also talking about being 3rd place in the Big 12, the most disrespected conference in college football. Everyone laughs at the Big 12. The Big 12, it's the chaos conference, as everyone will tell you. And it makes sense. The Big 12 just beats itself up. There is a very realistic chance you have like 5 teams that finish 10-2 this year. It is total madness what we have seen all season long from the Big 12. Craziness. ASU, if they finish 10-2, you are at best, if Colorado wins out, you are at best 3rd place at 10-2. Colorado definitively has a better chance than you to make the college football playoff, and they are also very slim because of everything we just talked about with the SEC, with the Big Ten having bigger team names to bid against you. That's all irrelevant. It's just worth talking about. So if you're hoping for a college football playoff berth, you got to win the conference. Bringing our conversation back to the conference. I definitely got on a little bit of a rant there. let's bring it back. Is it realistic? Sure. To a certain extent. To a certain extent, it is realistic. ASU has to define the odds, and they have to beat two of the four best teams in the Big 12, probably two of the top three teams. They have to do one of them on the road, and they have to host the undefeated number one team. Then you've got to win your Territorial Cup, the duel in the desert. You go down south for it, and U of A, with nothing to play for at this point, they're going to want to play to ruin your chances of going to a Big 12 championship game. And they're also trying to win that thing 3 straight. They haven't done it since the turn of the century. I know they got some big old hungry eyes on a 3rd straight win in the Territorial Cup, especially with everything that this game could mean by the time we get there. You got to define the odds. And ASU has defined the odds this year. They were picked to finish last in the Big 12. Several people said they wouldn't be better than 3 wins. There were places that thought ASU could go winless this year. Here they are at 7-2, beating teams they weren't supposed to beat. They beat Utah. They beat Kansas. They beat Mississippi State. They have these wins that nobody was going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They beat Oklahoma State. In the preseason, these all felt like losses. And come to see now that ASU is just better than those teams. They've defined the odds all year long, but this is where it all comes together. You need to continue to learn from your mistakes when you face that adversity. They just did that against UCF. They had mistakes. They pushed right past them. They found ways to win, and they won. But that's one game. You didn't do it against Texas Tech, and you didn't do it against Cincinnati. The odds and the historical evidence from this season are against you. So there you go. There's more odds for you to define. This is not easy. You're going to have to execute at the highest level, minimize the mistakes you have. You need to be able to get 100% healthy. That's always the case, but this is even more so for a team that's a bubble right now to get into the playoff. Not the playoff. I keep saying the playoff. To get into the Big 12 championship game. And of course, you need a little luck. And that's the toughest part. You can't count on other teams to lose for you. And yet here we are. But if ASU continues to defy the odds, and if these kids continue to buy into the culture that Kenny Dillingham has presented for them, anything is possible. ASU could go 10-2. They could go to the Big 12 championship game. I got news for you. If they go 10-2, that means you beat K-State and you beat BYU. If you meet BYU in the same championship game, you've already shown that you can beat them once. Maybe you can beat them twice. College football playoff, it's not entirely out of the question. It's very unrealistic. I will tell you that much, and I will stand firm on that. It is very unrealistic. But it's there. The Big 12 championship game, I don't know if it's super realistic. It could happen. It could easily happen. There's a lot of moving parts here. By the way, if you lose a game, you're done. It doesn't matter. You're not getting there at 9-3 with all the other teams that are going to potentially be there. You have to win out. That's immediately where this becomes super difficult. Then you need other things to happen as well that aren't in your control. This is a very difficult situation ASU is facing, but it's not out of the question. ASU wins out. Colorado loses one game. You're in. You are in the Big 12 championship game. A lot of pressure on ASU and a lot of pressure on good old Lady Luck to help us get there. What do you guys think? Are we going to the Big 12 championship game? Are we going to win out? Are we going to lose out? What do you guys think? Who is your Big 12 championship game match right now? Until further notice, it's BYU Colorado unless something crazy happens. That's for me at least. I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at RichieBrats36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your shows, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and you will get an update whenever we post new content. I appreciate each and every single one of you for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. And a special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. As always, you guys are the best in the whole world. Number one fans, all that good stuff for the number one college in the world, and a team that has continued to defy expectations. Well, don't you worry. We're going to keep you up to date as we start preparing for a trip to the Little Apple to play Kansas State. We've also got ASU basketball to be talking about as well. Now has never been a better time to subscribe to Locked On Sun Devils. So do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, and we'll keep you posted on everything with ASU football and basketball. I'll see you guys later, and until next time, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.